Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of MINDTRIP, where we explore the connections between mindsets and mental health.
Yes, guys. Nikki and I have been focusing this month on what leadership looks like for women. There's so many myths and misconceptions out there saying that women can't lead, possibly men do it better, just so many questions up in the air. But Nikki and I just really thought that this topic was inspiring to us and it was close to our hearts. And we just decided to bring that to you guys this month. So today we are focusing on leadership at work.
Yes, and to kick off a Bible verse that we just felt kind of is going to be the epitome of everything we're going to be talking about today. We're looking at Colossians chapter 4, verse 6. And it says, "Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you ought to know how to answer every man." And we will delve into that in a lot more detail throughout the rest of the show. But Taylor, at first hearing it, what does that mean for you?
Let your speech always be with grace. I'm just repeating it, seasoned with salt, so you ought to know how to answer every man. That just kind of lets me know that it's important to watch the things that you say, and in everything that you say and in how you interact with other people, to make sure you're being nice and you're being kind and you're not like quick with the tongue, like being mean to people.
Absolutely. And, I love the part so that you ought to know how to answer every man. I'm pretty certain this is not what was the intention of this scripture, but I think of that as Taylor and I do something like we focus on matching. So that's a therapy term. And when you're a therapist, you think about who's sitting in front of you, right? Maybe different experiences people have had, the kind of lives they live, how they speak. And then we try to adjust our tone, our speech to match that, to get on their level, to have that empathy and understanding. And so that's what that last part means to me too, is as a leader, we have to match to different groups of people, different teams we're working with. And it's really important to know how to adjust yourself so that you can lead everyone.
I like that you said that, Nikki. Matching is very important, not only in our roles as life coaches and therapists, but also as leaders. A lot of times you might have a leader at work or in a company who doesn't really appear to match well to their employees, match well to the culture, or even lead well. So it kind of like pushes people away, right? But when you have a leader who matches, who is able to sit in front of somebody and speak life into them, support them, and build them up, it really creates an encouraging culture where people feel supported and able to be pushed forward. Matching, I've always loved matching, right, Nikki? You've always said that I've been the master matcher.
Yes.
And you're really good at that as well. Just making people feel heard.
Yes. So we are going to talk so much today about how to be an effective leader at work. And especially being a woman, and we've talked about this throughout the entire month, how as women we have additional obstacles to overcome and we're viewed differently, right or wrong. It's simply a fact. And so before we get into that today, there's a quote that Taylor and I ran across that just kind of spoke to, I think, the importance of, if there's anything you take away from the show today, minus the skills and the different things that we're giving you, is the encouragement to try to become a leader and to touch more lives and become a bigger leader. Taylor, would you want to share that quote?
Sure. I believe this quote is by Michelle Obama. And she says, "Don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own." You guys know me. I always like to repeat the Bible verses, so I'm going to repeat this quote too, just because it is so important. And speaking to women, don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. To me, in this very moment, I'm thinking about the opposite. So negativity, right, breeds. It's quick. Gossip, anger, hate, all the negative energy spreads rather quickly in any environment, whether that's within the home, in your friendship group, or at work. but so does courage. And so if you're courageous and you're stepping out on faith and you're believing in yourself and you're inspiring other people around you, and that culture is created at work, just watch how rapidly that like takes place, like a domino effect. Like, how beautiful would it be to just see everybody around you in a positive vibe and positive energy? Because
And having, yes, yes. And I love that, just underestimating the importance and having the courage. And, as women, it is something that's courageous. Um, there's, don't mean to start off the show in the first 5 minutes throwing out a statistic, but that's who I am. It is what it is. So Hewlett Packard did an internal study within their company and assessing the rates at which people applied for jobs, why they applied for jobs, and then they touched base with these individuals after delving more into reasons why they applied for different internal promotions within HP. And one of the results of that study is that men applied for jobs when they met 60% of the qualifications and criterion listed, whereas women applied for jobs only when they met 100% of the qualifications. And it said when inquiring about this, women stated they felt they would not get the job unless they met all of the criteria. That is a huge, huge difference. And especially when we're talking about statistical studies, in knowing this from Taylor and I being researchers ourselves and doing our own original research, to get a 60% and 100% to have that big of a difference is incredibly significant.
it is.
So men will apply for a job when they see they meet a little more than half of the qualifications listed, whereas women wait to meet all of them. That is just mind-boggling to me.
It really is. And I think it really speaks to how society ingrains in us the role of a man and the role of a woman. Like we talked about and focused on last week, men are more supported in being assertive and naming what they want and going for it. Like a quote kind of, I don't have an exact quote, but it's basically saying, if you get an opportunity and you don't meet the criteria, just go for it and learn along the way. So men are more adept to following that, whereas women, we're kind of like, okay, I need to have A, B, C, D, fast forward through Z, or before I can even consider doing something. Now, that's not to say that some women out there don't just go for it anyway, whether they meet the criteria or not, but overwhelmingly that study showed 60% of men go for 60%, women have to be on 100. But I think that's the struggle. Sometimes women kind of feel like I have to be perfect before I can take that next step. That really holds a lot of people back in the comfort zone, and that really robs a lot of people, or women specifically, of joy.
So Taylor, so this study is done within HP, which has its own culture, it's its own entity, even though it's massive and worldwide. So Taylor, thinking about your life experiences, because now I'm just curious, back in the days when we were applying for jobs, did you wait till you met the majority of the criteria to even apply, or did that change along the way for you?
So I would probably be an anomaly to that statistic, because I look at like the overwhelming list, and if I meet at least half of them, I always apply. So
really?
I'm probably not a good woman to ask that to fit the statistics of HP, but I've always been the type of person to just be motivated and step out on faith to do those things. And just like that quote I shared earlier, when it comes to opportunities, if I see something, I'm ready to just go for it and learn along the way.
And so, yeah, that's interesting, because I was thinking back. I think I always waited till I met 100%, unless it said something like, you have to have, let's say, 5 years of clinical experience. And if I had 3 or 4, I would do it anyway. But I think in every single job I applied for, I'm trying to think, I waited until I met the qualifications.
What do you think were the impacts of that? Like, what made you feel like I'm just going to go ahead and wait? Like, looking back.
I just assumed, and I think it was less about being a woman, although that could have been ingrained in me, and I just didn't realize. I wasn't cognizant of how that impacted me and how I showed up in the world. But I just assumed people would look at my resume and just if I didn't meet the qualifications. Like, why would I be worthy if I'm not, because I felt also people would assume I wasn't following directions. Well, the directions clearly state you need this, and you applied anyway. And so definitely from that fear mindset, I would have never applied for a job.
And then now more so than ever, and this is by no means representative of any political views or beliefs, but I strongly feel like a lot of the presidential candidates that came out, like I guess I saw The Rock was trying to go for president, Donald Trump. I think I saw Meghan Markle. There's some bids for her. So celebrities are feeling like, wow, I meet some of the criteria. I'm just going to go ahead and apply for the president of the United States. Are you kidding me? So women, I'm speaking to women specifically, if there is a job out there where you feel like you meet at least half, why not bet on yourself and just go ahead and apply for it?
You know, that's so interesting that you mentioned that, Taylor, because generally again, culturally speaking, we looked at presidents as having to have constitutional law backgrounds, having to have spent time in Congress, having to have been lifelong, like having education in knowing worldwide issues, because the president of the United States does not just impact the United States, right? You had to have foreign affairs knowledge, and you kind of had to be this well-rounded individual, and that's what we expected. And then, like you said, celebrities who have zero experience, who don't understand the impacts of these things, are now our leaders. And I mean, Donald Trump was not the first person. I think I don't remember if it was Richard Nixon. Someone was in television prior to, but still had experience. But for the overwhelming majority, you're right, of our time since America's been founded, we expected qualifications, and men just completely broke that mold and said, people like me, I have a following, I'm going to rule the country.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us into one of the key steps that women can take to becoming strong leaders. If we're going to take away anything from that message that Nikki and I just shared, that is stepping outside of your comfort zone. And I'm pausing because I want you guys to hear that. Think about the feelings that arise for you when I say stepping outside of your comfort zone. Fear, uncertainty, judgment. So many things happen once you take that leap outside, but inside you're just comfortable. It's predictable. You know what's happening next. You're on autopilot. It's comfortable, but you have to step outside of your area of comfortability and go for those things at work or even in life. You have to bet on yourself and just say, I can do this. Who knows what is going to bring me, but what's the worst that could happen?
And Taylor, I love that you said, like, you identified some of the things you're going to feel. I think that we hear the word step outside of your comfort zone. We hear that phrase all the time. It's like this cliche phrase. And then especially when we're coaching people, because in our consultations, we'll say, like, this will not always be comfortable. You're going to have to step outside your comfort zone. People are like, yeah, I'm ready. I always do that. No, you don't. And I think the problem is people think that obstacles are stepping outside of a comfort zone. No, you can overcome a ton of obstacles and still do it within the same patterns that you're used to doing it, which is staying in your comfort zone. Or we know people who step outside of the comfort zones all the time and you wouldn't really know it, right? It's not because they're overcoming these big obstacles or doing these crazy things. It's that they're doing things against the natural inclination that they have and against their identified behavior pattern. And so stepping outside of your comfort zone, I'm going to reiterate what Taylor said, never feels good. It does not feel good to us. And we do this all the time. And then we coach on it. When I'm stepping outside my comfort zone, it feels icky. It feels uncertain. I'm second guessing myself. Like that's the point. That's how you know you're on the right track, because all of those icky feelings come up. Yes. And so leaving your comfort zone is not easy. And you have to do it to make strides in life.
Again, with leaving the comfort zone, it's going to be different than what you're used to. And, your brain is going to scream to you, what are you doing? Anytime the body is feeling stressed, there's going to be a fight or flight reaction, whether it's a real threat or a fake threat. But you got to push through it, because when you are trying to identify and grow yourself and engage in that personal growth, especially at work, when you've got eyes on you and judgment, and sometimes people, why would she even feel like she's qualified for something like that? You got to push through it, because if you listen to yourself and those thoughts that go on between your ears, you might not ever step out of that comfort zone.
Absolutely.
You might be on autopilot for the rest of your life, and who wants to fly that way?
Mhm. And I just think about there's so many different reasons that different vulnerable populations will stay inside their comfort zone. Right.
Mhm.
So today we're focusing on women because I don't know if you guys noticed, Taylor and I are ladies. So again, close to our hearts. Um, but I think back to like we are so ingrained in everything we hear. So even like if you grew up in the church, I know. So I grew up Greek Orthodox, and my family is very Greek. So we talk about being obedient. Not only were we obedient to Christ and we were sheeps of Christ, right? We, as Greek women, had to be obedient to our men, to our
Mhm.
fathers, our brothers, our male cousins, our husbands. It was our job to cook for them, to clean for them, to take care of them. That's how my great grandmother taught me. I mean, that's a whole separate story, right? So that's how they interpreted that, to be a sheep to men, meaning the men in your life. Um, Fast forward to, not that Taylor and I are obviously preachers, but fast forwarding to applying this to life, being a follower and obedient to Christ, yes,
Mhm.
you can bet you're behind. I'm not going to be obedient and one down to the men who run this world when women are incredibly adept leaders. And I think that's where we have to, when we grow up hearing these things, differentiate the difference and know how to apply that in our lives.
Nikki, I'm so glad that you said that. You said you can bet your bottom dollar I'm not going to go ahead and bow down to men and be a sheep to them. Amen to that. I feel exactly the same. And to kind of tie that back into women in general and in the workplace, like just look at the leadership qualities that women have. I know we touched on this last week, but I want to bring it back to you guys again because it's so important. When you look at a woman in a leadership position at work, overall, the environment has a lighter feel. The woman is always speaking to, well, for the most part, the woman leader is always speaking to her team, building them up, engaging, supporting, figuring out what the goals are and how to get there. It just creates an atmosphere of like, wow, this is great. Whereas sometimes when a man is a leader, it's kind of like, I'm going to pull myself up by the bootstraps. I've done this by myself. Let's go straight forward and you guys just follow me.
Mm-hmm.
And whether a woman has that style of leadership or a man or vice versa, just think about who you would want to work beside.
Mm-hmm.
Which qualities do you want to work beside? Do you want to follow somebody or do you want to be molded and guided and heard along the way?
Right. And we know, and by we, I mean, there is thousands and thousands and thousands of research articles on organizational leadership, right? So it is well documented and observed that companies do better when a leader creates more leaders, right? There's a quote, I think I posted on Instagram a couple weeks ago, but it says, like, the best and most productive team is when an outsider walks into a room and can't tell who the boss is,
I've
right?
heard that. Yes.
Oh, I love that, because the point is that you want everyone to be equally skilled so that if someone gets hit by a bus, everyone can pick up and know what to do, that
Mhm.
everyone has those leadership qualities, can have difficult conversations, good
Mhm.
communication skills. You want everyone to have the same abilities as the leader. And so your job as a leader is to build up other leaders. And like you said, Taylor, that requires that support, that encouragement, that open communication.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, when women are trained to be in leadership positions, they excel at that.
Right, right. I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate or share some of the things that I've heard being a leader in the different positions that I've been in. Oh, well, you're too bubbly. You
Mm,
have to make sure, that you're more assertive in your communication because people are going to walk all over you. And I've heard that in almost all organizations that I've worked for, and I've been a clinical supervisor, a leader, or whatever. That's who I am. I'm just positive Patty. I see the positive in everything. I invite everybody to have an open space to speak. For me, it's not about hierarchy.
mm-hmm.
For me, it's about everybody's equal in my eyes. And I want to teach. I want to give everybody a voice. Again, I want everybody to learn. So when I hear that, to me, it's kind of like, wow, do people really view me, a woman leader, as being so positive that I can be walked over?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your experiences, Nikki? What have people told you about your leadership style? And really quick, do you think that they would have said that to a male leader?
That was what I was going to add to that. I'm so glad you said that. I think one of the biggest criticisms I got, I was a clinical supervisor of a group of therapists, and I was consistently told by my boss that I was too educational and informative during our group supervisions. I was too much of a teacher, and I should like knock that off and make it more conversational and less teachy. And I'm like, okay. And I really took it to heart, and I read Brene Brown's an expert in this field of leadership in the workplace. So I read all three of her books, and what I realized was in her books, it's no, you as a leader, you want to teach other people to be leaders, and you want to teach them, and people like to learn. It's a learning and growth environment. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. And so it was just very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I think about the male, we have very few males in our organization, but all of them are at the top of the food chain, at that place I was working at. And I'm thinking, would they have said that to the CEO? Oh, like, you're too educational and you teach too much. Like, he has a bachelor's degree. At that point, I was working my PhD. I'm like, all right, like, we wouldn't have criticized him for being too informative and giving us too much information, too much data. Like, I understand I'm a statistics person. I wasn't asking my team to memorize this information. I just throw it out there for the sake of, here you go. Like, it's free for you. Do with it what you will. Memorize it, great. Don't care. Like, I'm just offering this knowledge to you. And so, yeah, I think if I were a man, honestly, I would have been told, like, wow, you're so smart. This is why we hired you. Like, I think I would have been given accolades for that instead of being told it was a poor leadership style.
And I feel like there's so many women out there watching this show that resonate with what people have told you and what people have told me. You're too smart. You're too educational. Like you're this, you're that, you're too bubbly. But that works. And research shows that that grows people. It makes people feel invited. It makes people feel like, oh, I can raise my hand and ask a question because she seems knowledgeable, and she's going to give me an educational answer. Or even taking that next step to ask for a one-on-one with you. Hey, I didn't understand this. Can you walk me through it more? Even with my style, just giving everybody a voice and having them have that safe space where they can speak up and say anything and ask any questions is so supporting.
And I mean, even looking at how we do this show, Taylor, like, you are that encouraging, like, guys, do this. And I'm like, statistically, blah, blah. This is who we are, guys. Like, what you see here is basically what we do all the time, right? And so this is our personality, and we have found it incredibly effective. And yeah, she and I used to get beat down all the time as women leaders. And the thing is, like, I'm so open to growth and I love feedback. I ask Taylor all the time, how could I do this better? Oh no, I should have spoken slower. Like, it's not that I'm not open to feedback, but to be beaten down and told your leadership is bad when we're doing what we're doing now, it's interesting.
I wanted to say a word, and Trinette in the comments stole that word right out of my mouth. Intimidation. I have seen time and time again, whether it was your leadership style, Nikki, because I used to work with you at a different company, my leadership at a different company, or any woman, anytime she is smart, educated, has her head on straight, let's call it like an alpha female, people automatically get intimidated by that, and they start projecting things onto her. They start saying things maybe that they're not comfortable with themselves, but they can point it out in this person. Oh, she's a know-it-all. Like, it's bad. It can get really bad. And that intimidation is a real thing that women in leadership roles have to battle almost every single day.
Before we move on to the other skills we want to give you, Taylor, do you remember, again, we used to work together. We got told all the time that we dressed too nice because we were always in dress pants and heels and blazers, and we come like bouncing into the office, and we got told that it was too much because we dressed too nice. What?
First of all, yes. First of all, I was like, wow, we are therapists, for one. So we want to present ourselves in a way that we look professional, because we are caring for people's mental health. Like, do you want to have a therapist that walks in with a messy bun and like disheveled looking? No. Like, I feel like if we're going to sit before a therapist, I'd want her or him to look presentable.
We
But
were supervisors. We met with juvenile probation, children and youth. Like we had meetings with the county. Like, I mean, this was guys, this was pre-COVID because now on Zoom, it's questionable about what I wear. However, yeah, and
you
yeah,
guys don't know what I got on from the waist down.
exactly. Yeah, we're not going to show up disheveled, looking like we just went out on like a drinking bender the night before. Like, what do you want from us? Like,
Right.
you're complaining because we look too nice.
Yeah.
You wouldn't tell that to a man, sir. You're dressed up too nice. You look too
Yeah.
good. Get out of here.
Yeah. And that intimidation is just, it's real. But I think that's why it's important as a woman to build up your confidence overall. Because when you, unfortunately, anybody, but especially a woman, when you put yourself out there to lead, people are going to come for you, whether it's good things to say or bad things to say. You have to just have that confidence and not allow things to eat at your heart, not allow things to eat away at your personality and who you are enough to change you. Because at the end of the day, the enemy is going to come for you and is going to try to take away everything that you've worked hard for. Don't let anybody get inside your head.
And that leads us into that leads us into our second skill. So that first one was to leave your comfort zone. The second one is I could coach you guys every week for a year on this. So I'm going to let Taylor probably take over, or Taylor, you need to like give me a signal to like cut it down so I don't talk for the rest of the show. But it's having learning skills, and this is something that will probably require you to work with a professional, but it's learning the skills to have vulnerable and difficult conversations. Because like Taylor said, they're going to come at you, and it's knowing how to respond appropriately. And it is an entire skill set and thing in and of itself.
That is a skill that you kind of have to the art of having difficult conversations. That's a skill that you have to craft, especially to your style. Just think about a time or a point in time in your life where you had something icky going on and you knew you had to tell somebody about it. Many people would either avoid it, push it to the back of their heads, ignore it. All those things fall under the avoidance category, right? Or you would just still keep it inside, but the resentment is going to start coming out. Your behaviorally going to start changing towards that person because you have not had that difficult conversation with them, and now that resentment is there.
Ooh, or you get you send or receive a really passive aggressive, like lengthy email, or it's like what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this ties up with the getting outside of your comfort zone. You have to have difficult conversations if you value personal growth, if you value relationships, but more importantly, if you value yourself.
Oh, amen to that. Like you said, Taylor, difficult conversations among your marriage or relationship, with friends, at work, whether you're giving someone feedback or criticism that makes you feel bad or you're receiving it. We're going to break some of this down more, but some of the skills that you need to have polished is in order to have these vulnerable conversations is having self-awareness, knowing how to use non-blaming statements, knowing the skill of circling back and having conversations later. And in order to circle back, you have to be able to take a break, and so that you can circle back, and knowing how to set healthy boundaries. Like that's a lot.
That is a lot, especially Nikki, because as I'm hearing you state what it takes to have difficult conversations, that taking a break. So I know we've sent this out in our newsletters and talked about it in previous shows, but pausing and breaking is a big one that people just can't seem to work out and fail at, to be quite frank. And the healthy relationships and self-awareness. Sometimes when you want to have a difficult conversation with someone, that self-awareness just goes out the window.
And, again, we're not going to teach all of those little skills, but we can give some examples at least to get you guys thinking. So, if I were to set a boundary while pausing and breaking, this could be how it looks like. If someone is, whether it's a peer, a supervisor, it doesn't matter. Someone's coming at me and I think they're being disrespectful. I'm going to set the boundary of, Taylor, I'm using you as an example. Taylor, I hear you. I can hear you whether you yell at me or not, and it's not okay to yell. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk away. Let's circle back. What does your schedule look like tomorrow afternoon? Because I think this conversation is important. And I think we need to follow up on what we're talking about because I can hear the passion in your voice. But I want to follow up on what's happening right now because we're both heated. But right now I'm ending it because you're yelling at me.
That checks off self-awareness, right? Because you just notice that you're getting angry or upset by how I was talking to you, but you're also being aware of how that person is feeling. You're requesting to pause and take a break. You're being assertive because not only are you expressing how you feel in this moment, but again, you're acknowledging how that other person feels. And quite honestly, like I would leave that conversation being like, wow, maybe I was being a little bit mean. And yeah, let's calm down a little bit and revisit that tomorrow. I think that is a perfect way to communicate. And that's a perfect way to problem solve too, when cooler heads prevail.
And, when we circle back, it's not saying like, we'll circle back on this at a later time and then walking away. I know we're talking about the workplace, but in general, even if it's in a relationship, you have to set the date before you end that conversation of when you're circling back, date and time. Like, when are you free? Tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, next week? Like, it needs to be a clearly defined time upon which you circle back. You can't just say I'm circling back to avoid and then run away. That's not circling back. That's just fancy avoiding.
Just because you say and you intend to circle back but never do it, that's avoidance, guys. Okay.
Yeah, and if you leave that person, even if they're at fault, if you leave that person hanging and not knowing when to circle back, you're gonna get some passive aggressive.
Just also imagine. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off. But just also imagine if you were in that situation and somebody's like, I'll circle back with you, just the level of anxiety that you may feel or anticipation awaiting that conversation, and then it never happens.
Right.
Or you don't know when it will happen.
And so to be self-aware, you have to be self-aware to set boundaries, but you have to know what your boundaries are in life. This is something that I've struggled with my whole life, and it circles back to crazy upbringing. Did not know how to set boundaries anywhere. I would have lots of feelings, and I still to this day struggle. And much, much better. It is still an area of growth for me. And so, with Taylor and I and our enmeshment being friends and weird family and business partners, this story is going to encompass all of those things for you guys. But a way to not resolve conflict and not have a difficult conversation the appropriate way is Taylor did something. I was sad about it. I avoided it for like a week because I wasn't setting healthy boundaries. And then when I decided to have a conversation with her, I sent her like a 17-paragraph text message, to which Taylor simply responded, "What Holy the crap. Expletive?" Yeah, or something.
Holy crap! To be, politically correct here.
Yeah, and so Taylor, tell me from your point of view how you were feeling in that moment of just getting it all at once, not knowing I had been feeling some kind of way.
In one word, overwhelmed. Just in one word, because and I know I've done this to you before too, but sometimes when we get very passionate about things and we're stewing on it for a while, that's just how it comes out. We bombard people when they come through the door, or just send mass emails, mass texts. Like sometimes we just got to get it out and we don't know how. But when we do that, you create to the sender feelings of overwhelm. Like, where do I even start? And maybe you didn't even pick up on the behavioral cues that they were upset with you. And it just smacks you in the face. Like, first of all, I didn't even know you were upset at me. Like, I don't know where to start. Just lost, Yeah.
And I kept putting, here's the other thing too. I kept putting like smiley faces. I was using non-blaming statements. I was like, I understand why you're feeling like blah, blah. Like I was trying so hard. I'm like, I'll put through smiley faces in there. Like, it's okay. I just wanted to it's not okay. Like you can't have a vulnerable conversation like that. So Taylor, you set a really healthy boundary and you're like, we're going to talk right now. Like I'm driving over to your house, but we're doing it in person. And then she gets here and she's like, okay, so tell me. I was just like, no, I think I got it all out in the time. Like it should have been an in-person conversation. We were fine and we used all these skills. And
But
that was probably one of the best conversations of our life.
I was gonna say, here's the thing, like I was interviewing people for an agency that I work for. And Nikki had like texted me cute things all day, like, oh, Mazikeen did this, and I'm so happy today because I did my morning routine and blah, 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 blah. I put my phone down, and I kid you not, it's probably 2:55, interview starts at 3 o'clock. I pick up my phone to look, and it says, Nikki, 6. I'm like, she sent me 6 messages. Oh, maybe it's, hey, when you come over, like, want to get sushi? Nope, it was paragraph. I was keep scrolling, and I said, holy crap, Nikki. Holy crap. I just felt so overwhelmed and didn't even know where to start. But like at the same time, I knew in the way and the things she was saying that she felt some type of way, and she was trying to be clear and be kind about how she was feeling. And I wanted to give her that space to do it in person. When you send passionate things through text message or through email, your message can get lost and misconstrued. Mm-hmm. And I know some of the things that Nikki was saying, I was taking offense to, but I was like, just pause, because maybe she doesn't mean it that way. I was like, Nikki, I'm going to come see you after this interview, and we are going to work this out. The way you responded to me and I responded to you shows leadership.
And yeah, respect. And oh, it's awesome.
Shows respect. And, you know, we were able to solve a problem rather quickly. I feel like we were able to collaborate with one another. We were able to boost that engagement with one another. And we both left that conversation feeling heard.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it takes, so, you know, when we say have vulnerable and difficult conversations, that vulnerability piece goes back to your comfort zone. It will never feel good. And having difficult conversations does not mean like, oh, I'm so brave, I'm just going to tell you how I feel, because that's what I did. That was not the right way to do it. Like I told her, and I was nice. I mean, I was super nice about it. It was just a lot. Like I feel like non-blaming and kind. The problem is I didn't set my own boundaries by addressing things when I should have a week before. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't self-aware. And instead of saying like, hey, Taylor, I'm feeling something, let's circle back. What are you doing tomorrow? Or setting a meeting, right? And so I had broken a lot of my rules. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you have to know yourself and know your boundaries. Because we had, like you had said earlier, Taylor, when you don't know your own boundaries, or you don't set them clearly with other people and then they break them, like Taylor broke a boundary with me, but I also hadn't set it with her clearly. Mm-hmm. She didn't know she broke a boundary with me. What do? I don't even think I thought about it that week. I think my subconscious was thinking about it because I wasn't sleeping. And then all of a sudden one day I woke up and like, I think I got out of the shower and I was like, oh, this is why I've been feeling bad. And then just like, 17 paragraphs later.
We're storytelling because it's perfect. Okay, I'm trying to like spare the details, but since we're storytelling, like Nikki and I had a great conversation about a coworker, and we were just trying to problem solve, figure out like how can we be better and show up better for this person. And immediately after the phone call, Nikki texted me and said, "Did you record that conversation and send it to that person?" I was like, "What?" I was like, "No." And then I just laughed it off. Like I thought she was just being funny, but then I realized she was being serious. And I was like, I think Nikki is feeling hurt and betrayed by me in some way, but she hasn't mentioned anything, so I'm not even gonna bring it up. Mm-hmm. And then later that day, apparently that is what I did to her. So that was one of those examples though, guys, right, that we shared with you. If you don't set those boundaries and you don't circle back or have that difficult conversation up front, it's going to start to come out in your behaviors. Mm-hmm. It's going to start to impact your thoughts and how you view that person. And you're going to start to see that person in a different light that's not pleasant, or how you know that person to be. So it's difficult, but step outside of your comfort zone and have that difficult conversation for your relationship, whether it is a business partner like it was with Nikki and I, whether it's your husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, an employee, somebody above you. You have to do it. It's a skill that you have to practice every single day.
And that difficult conversation with us was not just me telling her how I felt. It was setting boundaries. You know, Taylor's boundary was, Nikki, if you need to talk to me about something serious, we're going to schedule it. We're talking in person. Fair. And my boundary was like, Taylor, you need to do X, Y, and Z for me to have full trust in you. Because right now, I wasn't feeling it in that moment. And here's why. Okay, fine. Both easy things for us to meet, are we perfect? No, but like it was fine. And so that's the thing. When you don't set boundaries, when we say it will show up, like Taylor said, it will show up in your behavior,
Yeah.
not because you're intentionally doing it. I wasn't seething for a week. I wasn't stewing. I had no idea until it just hit me.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's so important to have all these skills and use them all at the exact same
Right.
time, which is, it takes practice.
And I just wanted to share with all viewers that, Nikki and I bring you guys great topics week in, week out, month in, month out. But everything that we talk to you guys about, we have experienced ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we've figured out a way that works not only for our clients, but works for us. Like, we try so hard to practice what we preach
Mm-hmm.
because that's important to us. And like, what we bring to you guys is tried and true.
Mm-hmm. We always practice what we preach. Sometimes we fail. And that's when we go back to practicing what we preach. We're like, things are better, right? Like we make
Right.
mistakes. Like I'm sharing this really embarrassing story of how I failed at doing what I normally do really well because I
Right.
had a moment. Like I'm
Right.
human. I was feeling it, So yeah, we hope that by sharing these, you guys can relate and it's helpful because
Mhm.
that's what we're here to do.
And in the spirit of learning how to define healthy boundaries, I want to leave you guys with a quote before we end here. And it's by Audre Lorde. If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies about me and eaten alive. That really, truly sums up what Nikki and I just got finished sharing with you guys. You have to know yourself. You have to learn yourself, learn your triggers. What makes you happy? What is your leadership style? How do you want to show up in this world? What are your boundaries? Meaning, what will you accept? What's that hard line that you won't accept? And know everything in between. Define yourself for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to easily be crunched by the judgment of other people, by their projections onto you. It's not going to be good. Define yourself if you love yourself.
And knowing, I mean, Taylor, you gave such an amazing comprehensive list. Knowing your core values and then knowing and being honest with yourself to say, I don't know, and this is something I need to work on. It's okay if you don't know your core values. It's okay if you don't know your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing enough to know you don't know, and then having the courage enough to work on it, because it does take self-reflection, which because we are human and sinners and make mistakes, sometimes self-reflection is not always a fun journey, but it's a needed one.
I 100% agree with that. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Mind Trip, where we continue to explore the connections between mindsets and mental health. Please follow us on all of our social media websites. On Facebook, it will be Bryant and Katsaounis Life Coaching. And we have 2 Instagrams now because we are targeting women leaders and people who have been through trauma. So the leadership, if you're interested in that, will be BKLLC19 on Instagram. And on also on Instagram for the trauma, it's going to be The Sex Trauma Coach.
And always visit our website at visiondrivencoaching.com. Our newsletters will cover both topics. Mm-hmm. We are currently in the process, not that we told our website designer this yet, so if he's watching, sorry, Kevin. We have another update. We will be adding more of the trauma stuff on there as well in the upcoming months. It's a process, so be patient with us until everything is up there.
That's right, guys. Thank you so much, and we will see you. Actually, you will see Nikki.
Yes.
Oh, you will see Nikki next week, as I will be in Florida on Wednesday, and she'll be joining me in Florida on Thursday. So have a great week, guys, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.